Hello everyone, welcome to this video Alteryx hands-on practice questions. In this video we will see how to calculate the relative strength index for trading. Below are the topics which we will be using from preparation. Mainly we will be using the multi-row formula and from importing the interactive chart. A data is from Kaggle and these are the columns in the data, but we'll be needing only two columns out of it. There are multiple files here. I'm just using one file which is a.aus. Our output is going to be line chart which shows the relative strength index. Few definitions. So relative strength index measures whether a stock is overbought or oversold. If RSI is less than 30, the stock is considered to be oversold. If it is greater than 70, then it's considered as overbought. Relative strength index. To calculate the index, first we have to calculate the relative strength, which is the average gain of 14 days divided by average loss of 14 days. Next, to calculate the actual RSI, it is 100 minus 100 divided by 1 plus RS. Let's move on to Excel to see the demo first. From our data set, we would need the date and the close value here. Then we'll calculate the change. Change is always current minus previous. So it's B3 minus B2. The first row will not have any change because it doesn't have a previous row. To calculate gain, if the change is greater than 0, then it's a gain, else it is a loss. So if it is a loss, we'll put gain as 0 and move the value to loss, but it will be an absolute value. The minus is omitted. Here it's a positive value, so it's a gain and loss is 0. Here it's a negative value, so it goes to loss and gain is 0. To calculate the average gain, we have to start calculating it from since it's an average of 14 days, we are calculating it for the 15th day, where we take the average of D3 to D16. We could have taken even D2, but it's 0, so no need of taking because it will add an extra thing to the average. Same thing, we'll have the average, which is the normal average for 14 days, last 14 days. After these two are done for the first day, for the next day, we have to use this formula. The formula mentions that we have to take the previous gain here, multiply it with 13, add it to the current gain, and then divide by 14 to take the rolling average going forward. So going forward, this is the formula used. Same case goes for average loss. RSI we will calculate using this formula, which is simple division, and RSI will be exactly using this formula. Now let's move on to Alteryx to see the practical use of it. I'm using input tool to get my data, and the file which I mentioned is a.us I'm using. The data is from 1999. I just limited it to 2016 for now using a filter tool. In the select, I'm limiting the fields to date and close as other fields are not needed. I'm adding a record ID to this. Next, to calculate the change, I'm saying if the record ID is the first record, then the change is 0. Else, we will take the close, which is the current close, minus the previous close. To get this row minus 1 in this multi-row formula, here if the number of rows is 1, then we get row minus 1, current row, and row plus 1. If we want other rows, we can increase this value, which we'll see in the other two. A change is done. Now we have to calculate the gain and loss. So if change is greater than 0, then keep the change, else it is 0, and put it as gain. If change is less than 0, then keep it as 1 minus 1 into change, because we are getting the absolute value, else it's 0, and this is the loss formula. Moving on to average gain, I've increased this column from 1 to 14 to get the previous 14 days. The record ID is 15th. Then we're calculating a normal gain, sorry, average of last 14 days. So I'm using the row minus 13 till the current row. Row minus 14 I'm not using because anyways it is 0, which I mentioned in the Excel also I have not used. I'll add all the rows from row number 13, which is the previous row number 13, to the current row and divide it by 14. This is for the first record, which is record 15. If record is greater than 15, then we have to use the formula which I showed here, which would be the previous gain into 13 plus the current gain and adding up entirely this, dividing it by 14. Then we'll end our else and the if block. Similar thing we'll use for our loss. After this is done, we will calculate the RS, which is the division of average gain by average loss, and RSI will use the formula which we have seen before. I'm using the round function to make this RSI as 2-digit rounding off, and just using the data cleansing tool so that I can remove the unwanted leading and trailing spaces. After that, I'm using the configure chart where I'm using the line chart. In my x-axis I have the date and my y-axis I have the RSI. Other parameters you can just format it. Next is a report header where I'm giving a report title including the date, and this is the format of the date. Finally, the render tool where the data field will contain the chart. The header field will contain the header, which is the report header. Here we have to select it, and we have to select this checkbox, so header and footer on first page if we want it on the first page. File, I have chosen a specific file for output, and the report style I have kept as default. This is the output which will be getting as line chart. Thank you so much for watching.